There are athletes who perform. And then there are those who transcend, men whose names become verbs, whose highlight reels become folklore. For over a decade in the National Football League, few running backs instilled more awe, more fear, more admiration than Adrian Peterson. But before the MVP trophies and record-breaking runs, before the fame and controversy, Adrian Lewis Peterson was just a boy from East Texas, a boy molded by pain, shaped by faith, and driven by something deeper than talent, destiny. Adrian was born on March 21, 1985, in Palestine, Texas, a small town with just enough charm to be forgotten by the rest of the world. He was the son of Bonita Brown and Nelson Peterson, both athletes in their own right. His father, Nelson, had been a standout basketball player at Idaho State and even flirted with a shot at the NBA. His mother, Bonita, was a Texas State track and field champion. Genetics were on Adrian's side. But life? Life had other plans. When Adrian was just 7 years old, tragedy knocked at the door, literally. He and his older brother Brian were playing outside on their bikes when a drunk driver came speeding down the road. The car struck and killed Brian, who died in Adrian's arms. The pain was unspeakable, the trauma unimaginable. But even then, the young boy didn't break. If anything, he hardened. He ran. And he kept running. In high school, Peterson became a legend. At Palestine High School, his ability to read defenses, accelerate through contact, and break tackles made him a Texas phenomenon. In his junior year alone, he rushed for over 2,000 yards. But it was his senior season that truly turned heads, over 2,900 yards and 32 touchdowns. Scouts came from across the country to witness this kid who seemed to play with the fury of a man twice his size. His running style was violent, relentless. He ran like he was being chased by demons, and maybe, in a way, he was. He was the #1 running back recruit in the country, and every major football program in the NCAA was calling. USC, Miami, Florida, LSU. But Adrian chose the University of Oklahoma. Not just because of the team, but because of the coach. Bob Stoops believed in discipline and toughness, two things Adrian respected. He wanted a program that wouldn't coddle him, one that would sharpen him. And sharpen him, they did. In his freshman year at Oklahoma in 2004, Peterson didn't just play, he dominated. From his very first carry, he showed the nation what power and explosiveness truly looked like. He rushed for 100 yards in his first game and never looked back. That season, he broke the NCAA freshman rushing record with 1,925 yards. He was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy, a feat unheard of for a freshman at the time. Had it not been for USC's juggernaut quarterback Matt Leinart, the trophy might have had his name etched on it. But Peterson's college career wasn't all glory. Injuries started creeping in. A high ankle sprain in his sophomore season. A broken collarbone in his junior year. Each injury sidelined him, but none could silence him. He returned from every setback with the same drive, the same hunger. After 3 years at Oklahoma, he declared for the 2007 NFL Draft. There was some hesitation among scouts. His running style was high impact and upright. Some feared it made him injury-prone. Others thought he might lack versatility. But the Minnesota Vikings weren't listening to the noise. They saw a once-in-a-generation back. They selected Peterson with the 7th overall pick, and history was set in motion. Peterson wasted no time making his presence known in the NFL. In his first professional game, he rushed for over 100 yards and had a 60-yard touchdown reception. He was fast, yes, but it was his power and vision that truly stunned opponents. He didn't dodge defenders, he erased them. Then came November 4, 2007, a day that would cement his place in NFL lore. That afternoon, facing the San Diego Chargers, Adrian Peterson ran for 296 yards, an NFL record for a single game that still stands today. At just 22 years old, he shattered records with the kind of power and finesse that made veterans look like rookies. The football world stood in awe. This wasn't just a running back. This was a freight train in cleats. Peterson was named Offensive Rookie of the Year and selected to the Pro Bowl. But he wasn't done. In the years that followed, Adrian Peterson established himself as the NFL's premier running back. 1,341 yards in 2008. Over 1,800 yards in 2009. Every season, he put defenders on highlight reels, not with jukes, but with sheer will. He didn't just break tackles, he broke spirits. He was the kind of back you game planned around. And yet, he kept producing. But the biggest test of his life wasn't on a football field. In December 2011, disaster struck. In a game against the Washington Redskins, Peterson tore both his ACL and MCL. For most running backs, that's a death sentence. Some never return. Some never run the same. But Adrian Peterson wasn't most running backs. From the moment he went down, he was already planning his return. He committed to rehab like it was a Super Bowl. And in just 8 months, a timeline almost unheard of, he was back. What happened next stunned the world. In the 2012 NFL season, fresh off a double ligament tear, Adrian Peterson rushed for 2,097 yards, just 8 yards shy of breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. He carried the Vikings to the playoffs almost by himself. He was awarded the NFL MVP and the AP Offensive Player of the Year. It wasn't just a comeback. It was a resurrection. He ran like a man possessed, like someone who had made peace with pain and used it as fuel. At his peak, he was a force of nature, fast enough to outrun a safety, powerful enough to truck a linebacker, elusive enough to dodge a cornerback. He had the legs of a sprinter and the heart of a warrior. He became the face of the Vikings, the engine of their offense, and a symbol of perseverance. But life, as always, wasn't done testing him. Adrian Peterson had just defied the odds. He came back from a career-threatening ACL and MCL tear not only to play, but to dominate, to reclaim his crown. His 2012 MVP season wasn't just impressive, it was mythological. People began to speak of Peterson in hushed tones, as if he were a warrior out of time, someone carved from stone and fueled by thunder. But as he stood at the top of his sport, the next chapters of his story would remind everyone that even gods can bleed. And even legends carry burdens. The seasons following his MVP year were still filled with brilliance. In 2013, Peterson rushed for over 1,200 yards in just 14 games. The Vikings, though struggling as a team, continued to rely on their Iron Man to carry the load. No matter the defensive scheme stacked against him, no matter the lack of a consistent quarterback, Peterson remained a workhorse. The embodiment of the old-school back. Tough, durable, punishing. But in 2014, the world saw a very different side of Adrian Peterson, and not one that belonged on any highlight reel. That September, Peterson was indicted in Texas on charges of reckless or negligent injury to a child. The news exploded. Peterson had disciplined his 4-year-old son with a switch, a thin tree branch, leaving noticeable welts and bruises. He claimed it was how he had been raised, a disciplinary method rooted in the culture of the South. But public opinion was swift, divided, and harsh. What some saw as corporal punishment, others saw as abuse. The NFL was thrown into another PR crisis, just as it had begun dealing with fallout from the Ray Rice domestic violence case. Peterson was deactivated from the Vikings after just 1 game. Then came the suspension, initially with pay, then without. He missed the entire 2014 season, placed on the NFL's exempt list while the legal process unfolded. He eventually pleaded no contest to a lesser charge, avoiding jail time but not public scrutiny. The fallout was intense. Fans were split. Sponsors dropped him. Commentators debated him. And yet, the man at the center of it all remained mostly silent, stoic. He apologized publicly, stated his intent to grow as a father, but also stood firm in his beliefs about discipline and intent. The return to the field would not be easy. And yet, in 2015, return he did. Adrian Peterson reclaimed his role as the Vikings' starting running back and, against all odds once more, led the NFL in rushing with 1,485 yards and 11 touchdowns. He was 30 years old, ancient in running back years, and had just returned from a year-long suspension into a league that had begun shifting toward passing and running back by committee systems. But Peterson? He kept it simple. He put his head down, legs churning, and carried the team. That 2015 season was a statement, not just of skill, but of endurance, of survival. Few players could ever rebound from such a fall in both reputation and rhythm. But Adrian Peterson wasn't wired like most athletes, and the Vikings knew it. They leaned on him again in 2016. But fate, once again, was not on his side. In Week 2 of the 2016 season, Peterson tore his meniscus. He'd returned for one final game that year, but it was clear the end was nearing. Not because his talent was gone, but because the NFL is a young man's game. And even legends, eventually, were out there welcome. In 2017, after a decade with the Vikings, Peterson was released. It was the end of an era, a bittersweet goodbye between the greatest running back in franchise history and the city that had both worshipped and scrutinized him. But Peterson wasn't ready to retire. Not yet. There was still fire in the tank. That same year, he signed with the New Orleans Saints. But the fit wasn't right. Peterson clashed with coaches over his role, and with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram already dominating the backfield, he was an awkward third wheel. After just 4 games, he was traded to the Arizona Cardinals. There, in the desert, Peterson gave flashes of the old magic. In his first game with Arizona, he exploded for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was vintage AP, cutting with precision, running with anger, refusing to go down. He would finish the season with 2 100-yard games before a neck injury ended his campaign. Once again, age and injury had conspired to slow him down, but not stop him. In 2018, Peterson signed with the Washington Redskins, now known as the Washington Commanders. Most expected him to be a backup, maybe a mentor. But once again, he turned back the clock. That season, he rushed for 1,042 yards and 7 touchdowns, becoming just the 5th player in NFL history to rush for over 1,000 yards in a season at age 33 or older. He passed the likes of Jim Brown, Marshall Faulk, and LaDainian Tomlinson on the all-time rushing list. He wasn't just playing, he was chasing immortality. The 2019 season saw more of the same. Another solid year, another 898 rushing yards, and more milestones. Peterson became the 6th all-time leading rusher in NFL history. He played like a man unwilling to let go. And maybe he couldn't. Football wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. In 2020, Peterson signed with the Detroit Lions, providing depth and leadership. He scored 7 touchdowns that year, often taking on the goal line role. But it was clear his carries were limited, and the league had moved on to younger, dual-threat backs. By 2021, he had brief stints with the Tennessee Titans and the Seattle Seahawks, though neither lasted long. His final game in the NFL came on January 2, 2022, with the Seahawks. No announcement, no press conference, just the quiet, fading footsteps of a warrior leaving the battlefield. But Adrian Peterson's legacy doesn't need a retirement speech to echo. By the end of his career, he had amassed over 14,900 rushing yards and 120 rushing touchdowns. He had 8 seasons of 1,000 or more rushing yards. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first-team All-Pro, and the 2012 NFL MVP. He was the 2012 AP Comeback Player of the Year. He holds the record for most rushing yards in a single game, 296. And he did it all with a running style that punished opponents and dared the impossible. His life off the field, too, was filled with contradictions and complexity. A deeply religious man, yet dogged by personal controversies, from financial troubles that left him bankrupt despite earning over $100 million, to multiple children from different relationships, to the child abuse case that redefined how fans saw him. He was human, flawed, proud, stubborn, resilient. Not always likable, but impossible to ignore. He's spoken in recent years of wanting to box professionally, of staying in shape in case a team needs him. He's talked of forgiveness, of learning, of trying to be a better man. And whatever the future holds, his place in football history is secure. Adrian Peterson didn't just play the game, he dragged it behind him. He ran with fury, with purpose, with ghosts at his heels. He ran for his brother, for his pain, for his name. He ran when the world doubted him. He ran when the world admired him. And long after his cleats were hung up, the echoes of his footsteps will remain. On the turf, in defenders' memories, and in the hearts of those who watched him run not just as a football player, but as a force of nature. He may never be perfect, but he was, in every sense of the word, unforgettable.